Roblox Deathrun. A series of fun games involving, what else, running through deadly and flashy traps controlled by a killer while outpacing the grasp of a Master Hand reject. And it's turning 10 this year. The third game is home to some of the best maps the series has to offer. With 18 expansive maps, more still to come, and varying sets of traps to run through and activate, this game offers plenty of replayability, and today, I've decided to compile them all into quite possibly my biggest video yet. This is going to be somewhat of a spiritual successor to my overpowered and underpowered traps video, which I'm not the biggest fan of. There will be references here and there for traps that got changed, or ones that I changed my mind about. But enough of that video for now, let's just cut to the chase. I'll be ranking all the maps based on aesthetics, traps, the music, and of course, how fun they are to play as both runners and the killer. This is all just my opinion, of course, and we all have our different tastes in these maps. And just to let you know, this was bar none my most difficult and time-consuming video to date. So at the very least, appreciate the amount of work that went into this, and hopefully this won't become outdated in just a few months. Alright, enough delaying. You've been waiting for this, and it's about time we get this over with. Let's begin the list, starting with I've never shown much love for this map, haven't I? Yes, in my opinion, Isla Louca is the weakest of the Deathrun maps. I don't recall ever being a fan of this map, to be honest, but I'll be fair and talk about the good stuff first. The traps are quite fitting for this map's theme. They really look like something from a security system of a top secret base. The final area has a big scale to it with that hulking platform, and the music is one of my favorites in the game. But when you're actually playing the map, I'll be frank. Compared to every other map in the game, this one's just not that fun. There's quite a bit of walking distance between a few of the traps, particularly in the first half, making the whole map pretty slow-paced. At least in the other maps where there's a long walk, the pathway is either dynamic or somewhat scenic, so it doesn't feel boring. Here, you pretty much just walk forward with little going on, but overall, the map just feels way too big and broad. Being Killer is not much better. Other than the Piranha Shark Fish Bridge and, to an extent, these platforms, the traps just aren't very effective unless you're really tricky. And as I've said before, if you fail to finish the runners with the giant fans, you're basically screwed. These spikes are completely negated by basic jumping, this bridge rarely works in your favor, and this dam can do no more than stall runners. Admittedly, some of the traps can be satisfying to overcome, especially these slimy bastards, but the map still feels like a Death Stranding hike, and above all, much of the map just looks boring. It may be the most played map in the game, but to me, every other map is just more well put together. Unless I have a certain ticket, I usually straight up avoid this map. Though it's never been one of my favorites, I at least enjoyed Jurassic Volcano a bit more than Isla Louca. The map has a really nice atmosphere with the ancient lavascape set up. The occasional lava spouts and the dead plant life and bones give this place a feeling of desolation. And the artificial structures add a bit of mystery as well. Who or what made them? What purpose do they serve? Other than killing runners, of course. And what is that doing there? But that's where my praises end, sadly. Though more well-paced than Isla Louca, there's a couple traps that just aren't fun to go through. These rocks and this grill will bring you to a halt unless someone sacrifices or you're up against a really slow killer. Actually, the traps in general in this map aren't very impressive. Other than the dragon statue on the towers, when they work that is, the traps are either uninspired or not very spectacular to look at. Ooh, a bunch of hands coming out of the floor tickling you to death. Brutal. Even for the killer it's not that fun. There's a couple ways to toy with the runners, but otherwise it's pretty plain and difficult to win, though nowhere near as hard as others. And the music, to me, just doesn't stick out as much as the others in the game. I don't mind this map much, there's a couple of fun parts, but it's still not one I'd find myself playing very often. By the way, if you see this robotic arm and jump down, you can actually land on it and you can stay there indefinitely. The only drawback is that it prevents you from winning, so don't do it. unless you're trying to troll people. As much as I like playing on this map, the more deeply I thought about it, the more problems I found, which really surprised me. So of course, I'll begin with the highs first, as usual. The setting and aesthetics are cool, I guess. The map takes place on an island hideout, which, to be fair, has quite a lot of detail to the scenery. Look at these ships. But the main thing I like about this map is that it's a spiritual successor to Seasonal Island, which sadly got retired. The sandworms, waves, swamp, and tree traps all originated from Seasonal Island. Even the design and layout mirrors the old map. But then comes the problem with the theming of these traps. To me at least, they hardly fit in with the pirate theme of this map. I honestly thought they worked just fine on Seasonal Island, except maybe the worms. So when you take them and put them on a pirate hideout, I don't know, they just seem a bit out of place to me. The only two traps that truly feel at home in this map are the cannons and the bombs. But to be fair, there's probably not a whole lot you can do with the pirate theme compared to everything else, and I do appreciate the devs for making a callback to a retired map, but it ultimately kinda works against it, and the pirate theme ends up getting a bit wasted. But I do like the zombie pirates replacing the hand on this map. That is a good reference to Dead Men Tell No Tales. You can even kill them with traps. Even with the short length and balance issues, I still enjoy playing on this map, especially as killer. Nothing feels as awesome on this map as racking up a bunch of kills with the OP tidal waves.
Wipeout!
Wipeout indeed. Oh, the cannons are good too, I guess. Ice Cavern was one of the 3 maps made for the game's launch, and even though I think it's the weakest of the bunch, there's still some stuff to like about it. This map has really pretty scenery with the glowing mushrooms and the huge crystal shards protruding from the water, and more. The atmosphere is really, chilling, and the music really nails that. The traps are pretty cool as well. These crystal spikes are fun to watch, and they're so tempting to run through. This statue's freezing breath can be deadly if you're tricky enough. This turtle statue is still one of the most stunning traps in the game, though since they added this wall, it's kind of a non-issue for the most part. But at least you don't have to exploit a tiny blind spot anymore. The not so super fun happy ice slide is always thrilling to go through, and it can end rounds if you know the timing. But now comes the tragic part, the last 2 traps. This big wall of crystal, though easy to escape, was always fun to go through. Seeing it explode was good times. This last trap was great. It seems unfair at first, but these snowballs give you a way out if you think fast. This was probably my favorite trap of the lot, until they ruined it by adding this unaffected slab. What's worse, it makes the advancing wall of crystal worthless as well. Way to ruin a finale, guys. Even with all that though, this is still a fun map to run through, and even being killer has its moments. And if this is so low on the list, then you know just how hard these were to order. Ooh, talk about bright lights. Electricity Outpost does not let up on the theming. To me, this is more of what Isla Louca should have been like. Bright yet industrial, barren but still interesting, and having an atmosphere that gives the place a shiny, futuristic feel. And the music fits the map perfectly. There's not much else I can say really. It's just a nice looking map that really commits to the theme. The traps do just about everything with the theme too. You got these giant exploding batteries, this little warden cliff tower that's hard to dodge, faulty wiring, a big sentry robot that's harder to evade than the turret and random platforms, this big magnet, a rolling fluorescent light that, get this, you can jump over. And who can forget the trains? Oh god, the trains. This is to me one of the most aesthetically pleasing maps. So why is this so low? Well, to put it bluntly, this is one of the most straightforward maps when it comes to gameplay. With a couple or so exceptions, the traps really don't give you much options in duping the killer. Other than making a run for it, The killer doesn't have much to work with either. There aren't many ways to surprise the runners without getting distracted, so the only thing you can really do for the most part is anticipate their actions, which is pretty mundane if you ask me. Still, this map overall is basically a better Isla Louca, and that's definitely something. Jagged Junkyard came to Roblox Deathrun along with the very first seasonal event, Scrappy Beginnings. That sounds like a Scooby-Doo origin story that no one wants. I certainly hadn't forgotten this map after the amount of scrap I had to pick up. Anyway, for what's essentially a big landfill, this map has pretty cool aesthetics. There's quite a bit of detail to it, from the plant life to the machines to the scattered pieces of junk, and it overall pretty much nails the whole junkyard theme. But to me, the map's greatest strength is in the traps, particularly the theming. It covers just about everything you expect from a junkyard, or at least everything I know of. Conveyor belts, fire, compactors, magnets, fire, heavy metal, a melting bucket, fire. That doesn't seem to work. The hydraulic press feels really rewarding to get through if you're up against a straggling killer, and standing in the right spot can completely counter these platforms. Playing as killer has its perks too. Though straightforward for the most part, there's a couple spots where you can toy with the runners and give them a false sense of security, which I absolutely love when playing as killer. The reason it's not any higher is because, aside from the aforementioned traps and ways to play, it's not as fun overall as the other maps. Though that's probably just me from experience, and the music is a bit too quiet for my liking. Regardless, I'll vote for this map occasionally, even without a ticket, and some of the traps are still fun to go up against. Oh boy, Castle Defense goes way back to the original. This was the first map to appear in all 3 Deathruns, and each one of them is memorable in their own right. The layout of this map makes it feel like the runners are laying siege to the castle, and the traps really emphasize the defense part. Archers, cannons, barrels, oil drops, pendulum hammers, a freaking dragon. The Loch Ness Monster? This map really lives up to its name, and that's a big plus from me. The one place where the map kind of falls apart, however, is the difficulty balance. I said it before and I'll say it again, the first half is much more dangerous than the second. Think these archers are poor shots? You'll be very surprised at times. These logs turn poisonous the moment they're released, so don't try it.
Dead.
This bridge can waste a lot of time because of its wide area. Oh good, you know this little trick. Better watch your head. Oh, and these barrels can waste time too, I guess. But once you enter that castle, you're home safe. These traps are laughable compared to everything before them. Tell me the last time you saw someone die to this post. This dragon can waste time, sure, but unless there's only one runner left, you'll eventually be forced to activate. But there is one trap that I believe deserves special mention. One that got a drastic nerf when I was gone. I still stand by that past statement. Before this nerf, these things were one of the most overpowered traps in Deathrun history. It took no brains to use and was essentially a free wipeout, only somewhat offset by its early placement. But now, with its new attack pattern, a smart runner can easily dodge the cannonballs. Now it's pretty mediocre. But hey, the cannon's reign of terror is finally over. It's still a fun map on either side, even if it's mostly in the first half. By the way, if you die early and you're feeling like a huge asshole, you can take others with you by pushing the bombs into them.
Team White, you've killed them all!
Goo'y Gameshow brings you exactly what the name advertises. There's goo, and you run in a Wipeout style game show. First, as usual, the aesthetics. In case you couldn't tell by now, this map is colorful.
Look at the colors!
Almost every piece of the map is painted in cold colors, from blue to purple to shocking pink. There's even some occasional warm colors. This is easily the most bright and colorful map in the game, and the music is fittingly upbeat for such a map. And they do pretty much everything with the traps. almost all of them would feel right at home in a legitimate wipeout course. From pendulums that knock you into the water, buckets of goo, slippery slopes, a big wrecking ball, and a slime shooting sentry. That does absolutely nothing except waste a second of your time and is easily the weakest trap in the game. And why the hell are there deadly looking spikes? Heh, I guess that's why they originally called it Game Show Gauntlet. Overall, this map explodes with color and detail, and wouldn't you know it, this was made in around just 1 month. I don't know how long the others took to make, but either way, that's really impressive for such a beautiful looking map. But how does the map play out? Well, some of the traps are fun to dupe, some of them, but overall, it's one of the most straightforward and easy maps in the game, though its low difficulty makes it less painful than Electricity Outpost. And this map is one of the most difficult and unfun experiences for the killer. Beyond the first few traps, there's really not much for the killer to work with. A single rusher can pretty much derail their plans over 2 traps. That and the giant sweeper can be rather unreliable at times. And the goo turret may as well not exist. But even with all that, there's no denying that this map is simply wonderful to look at and a great homage to Wipeout. Though I won't be forgetting those pain in the ass cores anytime soon.
Get the fuck over here!
Another map that came with the release of Roblox Deathrun, Training Course is a pretty memorable map for both the right and wrong reasons. First thing I'll say about this map is that it was better a few years ago than it is today, but I'll get to that in a minute. First, the aesthetics. The map doesn't have much scenery, but the atmosphere more than makes up for that. Look at that sunset. Just try and tell me it doesn't look beautiful. And the clouds below really give this place a feeling of remoteness. Yes, that is a real word. And much of the traps really look like stuff out of a ninja's training course. Wooden spinners, flying logs, spinning crates, guards that chase you when they're not always killing themselves, and my personal favorite. These platforms are evil, but they're great. They're pretty much unavoidable, but definitely escapable if you know how to survive. This map is a lot of fun, especially for the killer. But how do the traps work? If you thought castle defense was unbalanced, Training Course is on a whole nother level. Basically, the traps range from effortlessly powerful to unreliable to flat out useless. I've won a few rounds as killer in less than 40 seconds just with the first 2 traps. They're kind of fast and cover a big area. The spinners in this game are better than before, but it's still difficult to land a kill with them. And the swinging crate. Good buildermen. They messed up this trap's hitbox so badly. Just walk along the inner edge and the box cannot kill you. The only place it can kill a wise runner consistently is the edge before the trap itself. And need I say anything about these incompetent guards? Or this horribly inaccurate log? Or the Ice Cavern statue's pitiful cousin? The former 2 speak for themselves. And the big log? Just throw a pot at it and it stalls. It can even be stopped by ghosts. Seriously, why can't we just jump over it? This map may be unbalanced as hell in its current form, but I still love playing on this map in spite of that. I just can't hate this map for it. But nonetheless, its currently terrible balancing is what keeps this map from getting any higher. Poison Sky Ruins is another Deathrun map that was adapted from Deathrun 2, and one of my favorites I might add. Much like its predecessor, this map has a color palette that oddly stands out. The brick yellow buildings and pink goo along with the natural terrain really gave this map an identity, and that carries over really well to the new map. The new Poison Sky Ruins brings in some new traps as well as some old faces. The crumbling pillars, retracting ledges, breaking planks, and, to a degree, the barrels all came from the old map, while the new map gives us flipping pathways, poison gas, and spiked platforms. Oh, and there's these weak-ass turrets too. Like Isla Louca, the traps really give off vibes of penetrating a heavy security system, but in my opinion, this map is way more interesting. Who built this place? What were they keeping? And what's with those crazy builds? Running through this map is alright too, The ledges can be outpaced if you're fast and bold enough. There's this crazy shortcut through the gas trap that can really screw over the killer. And these platforms can be fun if the killer's aggressive. The killer, however, sadly doesn't have it so easy. Most of the traps really can't do much against any competent runners, even if you're good.
Boing!
And failing to finish them with the gas is basically game over. And remember how crappy these sentry turrets were? Now they're even worse. Sure, they can hit you now, but that means nothing if they can't kill you. Unless you're stupid enough to stand on the edge of the planks. Though it doesn't take away the satisfaction of scoring a wipeout with the pillars. So that's something, I guess. Overall, this is a pretty solid adaptation, and I really hope they continue to remake maps from the older games. Team Deathrun, please remake Treacherous Taiga. Poisonous Avenue started out as a Halloween-only map, and it looked and sounded a lot different. Now it's back and better than before, and it's all year round now. The map retains its Halloween aesthetics with the nighttime setting, purple-colored structures, giant pumpkins and spiderwebs. The list goes on. They covered just about everything for a Halloween-themed map, all over a lake and sea of purple and green, poisonous-looking water. And of course, the Bat Cave that is not the Bat Cave we all know and love seeing getting breached. This map's got all kinds of traps you'd find in a spooky Halloweenified landscape. A poison-breathing serpent, spilling cauldrons, falling cauldrons, bats, a shipwreck, poison sharks, and what's this? A sentry turret that can kill you? Consistently?
Oh my god, it's Christmas!
It's not very strong, but it can at least end a reckless player's run.
What the hell was that crap?
That alone earns a lot of respect from me. The map is simply stunning to look at, and the atmosphere perfectly complements the Halloween theme. Oh, and the music is nothing short of epic. However, this map has a pretty big setback. The cauldrons. Simply put, they're useless. Could the area coverage be any smaller? Anyone who's played this game for 30 minutes can probably figure out that you can jump around the poison spillage like so. This leads to a lot of killers getting royally screwed over by rushers. And as much as I like outpacing killers, it's just not as satisfying if it's enabled by a trap that isn't dangerous. I cannot tell you how many times I've reached the end with nearly 3 minutes left on the clock, all because the killer was slow on the uptake. And it's not entirely their fault. They have no idea that the cauldrons don't stop any wise runners. Even disregarding all that, this is a pretty easy map, so there's not much the killer can do anyway. So yeah, for those reasons, it's not as fun overall as the other maps coming up. But that doesn't take away from how breathtaking this map is. Still, if you're chosen as killer here, just be prepared for someone to take advantage of the cauldron's piss-poor coverage, and make sure you know where the hiding spot is.
Nope, getting colder. 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 Colder!
Oh, you're good.
Oh boy, Surface Escape. Another map from Deathrun 2 that brings back memories. Good times. The map is admittedly not one of the most impressive to look at. There's not a whole lot going on, but it does have some good detail in some parts, and it has a good atmosphere. But what it lacks in that, it makes up for with the fun factor. Like its predecessor, this is easily one of the hardest maps for the runners, up there with Galactic Terminal, and I like this map because of that. The traps start out standard, hit and miss dare I say, but they get really tough down the line. What? The traps are pretty much the same overall as before, but this game breathed new life into some of them, and in my opinion, they work better than before. For the most part. This boulder path is tempting to run up with that platform near the end. Anyone remotely close to the drop zone is doomed. unless the boulder decides to go off the platform instead. Don't rely on that. The minecart trap is now a single cart that goes slowly down the track and is somewhat underwhelming. At least it's not what it used to be. God, that trap was broken. The flooding cavern is much bigger and the path is longer, allowing you to really mess with common runners and waste their time. Then there's these floating spinners. These are so much fun for both sides. The killer has many ways to screw up the runners, while a good enough runner can counter those tricks. And if you fail to jump to the second spinner, you can save yourself by landing on one of the rocks below. Just hope that the killer isn't very attentive. Now the surface is where shit hits the fan. This stone can end a lot of runs. There's a tiny blind spot at the end of the ledge, but you need to be a decimal of a stud away from falling off, so it's a little bit risky. If you do get past that, you better hope the killer doesn't realize how far the wind can reach you. Oh yeah, this is the real gap you must cross. And it doesn't look like it, but this trap here is strong. The falling bomb explodes surprisingly fast, so jumping to the last platform is a death sentence. So it's all the more satisfying to reach the end and rub your weapon in the killer's face. Of course, there's one trap you're probably all thinking of after the traps video. The weakest trap in the game? Honestly, it's just really mediocre at best. You can sort of dupe the runners on occasion, but otherwise it's a lost cause against anyone wise enough to not go left and doesn't suck at platforming. I cannot stress this enough, everyone. Go right! But since runners tend to die on it regardless, I guess it doesn't matter. And the devs seem to have learnt their lesson in Poisonous Avenue. And I'm sounding way too much like I'm doing a follow-up to underpowered and overpowered traps. Back to map critiquing. So yeah, the gameplay is where this map really shines. It's a fun challenge for the runners and a screwy good time for the killer, even if things get a bit slow near the end. And overall, a great retake on a great map from a great game. By the way, watch out for this rope when you're chasing the killer. Could probably go without saying, but the devs are constantly outdoing themselves in the aesthetics department, and Roman Oasis is among the finest examples in the game. The theming is somewhat similar to Training Course and Poison Sky Ruins, but it is 10 times more beautiful and detailed. Every little bit of this map looks great. They went all out to make this place look withered and ruined like there was an epic battle, but still look majestic. The protruding bricks, the piles of rubble, I could go on. Oh, and the atmosphere is flawless, easily among the best looking maps in the game. The traps are also great. They have just about everything you expect from a trap-filled Roman fortress, like hammers, trapdoors, and anything else that's covered in spikes. Yeah, you thought this guy was gonna be the trap, didn't you? To more subtle ones like the flaming arrows, the guards that actually do something, the tipping pillars, the weapon carts, and the world's deadliest Willy Willy. The selection of traps here is spot on. Playing on the map, however, is kind of a mixed bag. The first half is fun for both sides, more so for the killer admittedly, since there's many ways it can play out. I really love this staircase. It might look like the trap is rendered useless with this position, but a smart killer won't be fooled. Watch out. But once you enter the Colosseum, that's where things start going downhill. From here on, the map becomes really straightforward and nowhere near as fun as before. Ooh, a big bucket pouring deadly liquids. Ooh, a giant flame-shooting grill. Those were so much fun the first time. And why do these bombs take a millennia to explode? And once you open that last door with an admittedly clever and fresh method, you're pretty much home safe, unless the killer is really good. So yeah, another beautiful map that falls a bit short in gameplay. The first half is still well made and fun to play, especially as killer, but the second half just feels bland and generic, which ultimately is what prevents this from making the top 5.
What the hell?
Now here's a map that stood the test of time. When the game first launched and the map was known as Corrupted Jungle, it didn't look very appealing compared to the other two maps, and it didn't quite have an atmosphere to speak of, as far as I remember at least. Also it had those useless trees. Then the map got updated and the second half is nothing like what it used to be. This temple looks amazing, and that's just from the outside. The inside of the temple has a beautiful atmosphere and an impressive amount of detail. To this day, this is still one of the greatest builds in the game's history. Hell, the rest of the map honestly looks better than I remember. The traps were really good back then, and they still hold up today. The flooding divot is still a really epic and breathtaking trap. The work put into creating the illusion of a raging flood must have been really time-consuming with all this detail, but it definitely paid off. It's really fun for both sides. It's tempting to advance to the next tower, but feels very rewarding to outpace the flood. And if you time it just right as the killer, you can rack up a serious body count. Easily one of the best traps in the game. These platforms are admittedly scary to try and cross, so many groups run to a halt here, but if you have good reflexes, you can avoid sinking into the water. It's very hard to pull off, but not impossible. This cliff face is another stunning trap. Like the divot, the runners have safe spots which give them more ways to traverse it, but also gives the killer more ways to toy with the runners.
What? Crap, that's not right!
A good killer can easily score a wipeout with this. This bomb trap, though a complete joke nowadays, was a legitimate threat back then. It only spawned a few bombs, but if you missed one, you were done for. It was one of the first traps in the game that didn't immediately kill you, but instead you had to escape it.
What the hell, man?
How I miss those days where you had to actually do something in order to survive. The trap lineup isn't perfect, but aside from those annoyances, this is, in my opinion, the map that set the standards for the traps in this game. This is honestly one of the most balanced maps, and that alone makes it easily one of the most enjoyable maps for both the runners and the killer. And to me, that's what makes the best maps in Deathrun. But there's still a few maps that I like just a little bit more. Hell yeah, now we're getting to the really good stuff. Pinewood Hideaway is one of the maps in this game that I always look forward to. This map has a pretty landscape set on a lumber mill, which in itself is fun to look at. The color palette gives the map a really autumny feel, fittingly for the season it was released in, and the trees and rocks complete that feel. There's not much else I can say. The map just looks wonderful. The traps are just what you expect for this place. Logs, axes, conveyor belts, and a freaking wood chipper. There's not a whole lot of variation to the traps, but they're all done in so many unique ways that you don't really mind it. The axes could be either giant or projectiles, the logs could be platforms or coming right at you, one conveyor belt speeds up while the other relies on a chute that shoots logs at you. That is a great display of flexibility in the traps. Some of the other maps show some flexibility with their traps too, but Pinewood Hideaway is one of the game's best examples. And now, the gameplay. I loved playing on this map since its release. It's got plenty of fun areas and traps to run through and use as killer respectively. The first third can be tough in the hands of a good killer, but the traps are really satisfying to outmaneuver. The building is full of fun traps too, and the killer has many ways to mess with the runners, especially with those planks. These logs are so satisfying to ride on when the trap is activated. Well, at least when they're not lagging. Once you exit the building, however, that's where the fun ends. I'm not a fan of the wood chipper, and the swinging log speaks for itself.
You have got to be kidding!
But besides that, this map is just fun. There's not much else I can add. It's fun to play on and looks great. It's a map so nice they made it twice. No, really, Shinyo actually rebuilt the map because he was unsatisfied with the first. So I guess it's safe to say, good call. Mountain of Death is the newest map in the game, and the other map originating from the original Deathrun. This is without any doubt my personal most anticipated map to date, except maybe Treacherous Taiga. And did it live up to those expectations? Let's have a look. I know I'm starting to sound like a broken record by now, but what else can I say except this map looks incredible. I really like what they did with this place. It's basically Isla Louca, but with lava, tons more going on, and overall 100 times more attractive. And that huge skull really captures the death part of this map. And it might just be me, but the nighttime setting feels like the perfect atmosphere. And the music? It's okay. All but a few traps are themed around fire and other hot elements. Fittingly enough, flamethrowers, heated spikes, walls of plasma, and what I can only assume is an invisible laser that heats up the platform. A simple but effective choice of traps. And the gameplay? Yeah, it's okay. You can survive these platforms flipping down by hugging while on the edges like so. The spikes can be jumped over if you're faster than the killer and you're not having any lag. This plasma wall was a tough trap, but very fun to go up against if you knew how to dodge it. It was a great trap, until they nerfed it into near uselessness. But these spinners is where the map is at. These were the most memorable things about Deathrun 2 Mountain of Death, except for those bloody fireballs, and they're just as fun here. Jumping on and off the activated spinners is so satisfying and fun. The rest of the traps though are either basic or just not very fun to use or go through. So like Roman Oasis, the gameplay of this map is a mixed bag, though it's worth it just for the spinners. But that's not why this map is so high. It gets here for being a revamp of an iconic Deathrun map, and a pretty solid revamp at that. Mountain of Death was my second favorite map in Deathrun 2, after the fireballs were made harmless. It was challenging and fun to play, so I was very happy and excited when it was revealed for Season 6, even if the trap layout was a little disappointing. Only 2 maps remain now, and there was no questioning these 2 would take the top spots. Safety first, be a runner second. Ha! There's no room for safety at this danger zone, not with every machine out for your blood. Safety First is an awesome map from the concept alone. Running through a big construction site with various machines trying to kill you? That is brilliant. And the map certainly delivers on the aesthetics. Any small thing you can find on a building site, skips, generators, barriers, you name it, they really bring the place to life. It really feels like you're running through a danger zone rigged with traps. Speaking of traps, they went all out here. Debris, construction machines, saws, spikes, dynamite, gas, boxes, ventilation, trucks, and the deadliest of all,
A bulldozer! I'm driving a bulldozer!
the trap selection for this map is perfect. Though I do miss that old saw trap. That was so much fun to survive until it broke. Oh well, the new traps are better than nothing. This map is a blast to run through and be killer on. The first part is really fun and rewarding to get ahead in, while the killer has many ways to trick the runners and get a really nice body count. And I don't mean with the bulldozer. The first half of the building is so rushable if you're good enough, and you can easily skip the annoying dynamite trap. On the other hand, a good and attentive killer can end the round with these traps because of how close together they are, and because some runners don't know how to time the boxes. The next room still has its perks. There's a big jump from this drum that can effectively skip the trap. It's risky but really satisfying and rewarding. And if you know about the delay, you can get a surprise kill with these boxes. Once again though, that's where the fun kinda ends. The last few traps are just meh. Though at least the trucks aren't useless anymore, but it's only a few traps compared to a lot of fun ones, so it's not too big a deal. This map is still so much fun to play. Hell, it probably would have taken the list, if not for the fact that this is largely based on the TF2 Deathrun map of the same name by Dr. Face. All but a couple traps are largely copied from that map, and it's because of that I had to knock this down a couple pegs, despite how different the designs are. But you know what? I don't care much. The TF2 map is an awesome map, and this is still one of my favorites regardless of its originality, lack thereof. They even added an Easter egg referencing Dr. Face's Gmod videos.
See?
Even if it's not the most original, this is still one of the most well-made maps in the game. But there's still one map that I enjoy just a bit more. When I was asked what my favorite map in the game was a few years ago, Galactic Terminal was my pick. And to this day, that hasn't changed. Galactic Terminal is simply a beautiful map. And they got the perfect builder for the job, Electroblast 199 of Core fame. To make things quick, the layout of the map is great. The structures are breathtaking, the scenery has plenty of detail, and with the space setting, this place is absolutely dripping with atmosphere. But what is it with Roblox games having gravity in space? Maybe the place has a gravity feel, that's my best guess. But I digress. And now for the traps. Like Pinewood Hideaway, this map features a great display of flexibility in the traps. With a few exceptions, they all use lasers, and the map utilizes them in so many different ways and forms. Cannons, a big sentry turret, walls of death, the latter having multiple variations, you name it, this map has it. Oh, and the non-laser traps? They're cool too. And it only gets better with the gameplay. In my opinion, this map has the best trap layout in the game. There's so many ways you can play out the round. The platforms on the first trap are close enough that you can switch between them and dodge the lasers, but a good killer can catch the runners off guard. These boxes are unpredictable and can score a surprise wipeout if timed right, and it's always fun to go through and dodge these big cheese balls. The first few traps are close enough together that you can end the round really fast if you're good at multitasking as killer. This gigantic laser spinner can be frustrating at first, but it's really fun if you know how to survive the direction change, especially if the killer knows how to use this tactic against you. And now my favorite. It's already fun to avoid the falling platforms, but if you're good at jumping and know how to time it right, you can actually jump around the laser wall. It takes practice, but it's super satisfying to pull off. These lamps used to be near useless, but in a really cool twist, they adapted the strategy of jumping on the bushes and removed the RNG. Now you can catch unsuspecting runners off guard. And finally, the turret. Before, it was annoying and difficult, but since they nerfed it, it's way less risky and more fun to run through if you know the pattern. This map is packed with so many good traps. Hell, even the lowest of the traps aren't that bad. Oh, and the music? Just listen. This has everything that I love in a Deathrun map. Gorgeous aesthetics, cool traps, great music, and above all, lots of possibilities. And that is why Galactic Terminal is my favorite map in Roblox Deathrun. I've probably missed out on a few things, but I doubt they'd impact the list much. And of course, there's always more maps coming to the game, and they've been getting consistently better over the years, and that's why they're gonna get their own videos. I'm always looking forward to new maps and new traps to traverse. Thank you all for your patience in waiting for this big ass video, and in the meantime, happy early 10th anniversary Deathrun, and happy 20th to me. Baneworth out.